My name is Iana Castro, and I'm an associate professor in marketing, and my research looks at consumer behavior in food retail environments. So what I'm hoping to do today is give you a little bit of background on why I think this is important to study, then give you kind of some fun findings from some of my research study, and kind of give you an idea of what my research portfolio is in this area. So this is what I'm interested in. What happens there? So how many of you consider yourselves to be the primary food shopper in your home? Okay. How many of you consider yourselves to be secondary shoppers? So you're kind of more of a fill-in kind of person. Okay, great. So what I'm really interested in understanding is what happens once you're in the store. So the majority of decisions are made in the store, and so what are the factors that when you're in there will influence you selecting one product over another, or essentially avoiding entire product categories? And so why is this important? So this is a routine behavior. So we shop fairly frequently. On average, US consumers go to the store about 2 times a week. That number varies based on a number of things, including ethnicity. So there are certain consumers who like to shop every day and pick up the items that they're going to be using for dinner. There are people who love Costco, and so they like to shop once a month. But generally, about 2 times a week, we're in the store. And 85% of adults say that they're responsible for at least half of the shopping in their home. So it's a behavior that we're all engaging in. It affects us, it influences our everyday lives. And like I said, most purchase decisions are made in the store. And so what I'm really interested in looking at is the different types of factors that influence what we buy. And so those could be in-store factors, so how the products are displayed, how the store is laid out, the decorative style of the environment, how warm the environment is, interpersonal factors, so things that are specific to us, so your preferences, your taste, what you think is important for you and your health. And then there's social influence factors. So that can be other people in the environment. It could be employees who may be helping you through a decision process. It could also be the people who are at the store with you and helping you or not make some decisions while you're there. What's really interesting about this space is that it's very dynamic. So the retail environment for food is really changing, and then consumer behavior related to it is also changing. And so now, because more people are involved in shopping and people are going to the store more often, that's making the behavior more interesting. But there's also a lot of options out there for where we can shop. So it used to be that people had a primary store that they would do their food shopping in. So if I asked you, where do you shop for food? Most people a few years ago would say, I go to Vons or I go to Ralph's. Now, most people would say, well, it depends on what I'm buying, and I have kind of a group of stores that I frequent when I'm making these types of purchases. So you can go to a traditional supermarket, you can also go to a specialty market or a limited assortment store, which are smaller stores that try to carry most commonly purchased items. You can also get food at a super center while you're shopping for other things that you might need for your home, or at Costco, right, where you can buy a lifetime supply of all kinds of things. But in the food area, they have a lot of organic products and they have a lot of frequently purchased items. Or you could go to a convenience store. Drugstores have expanded their food sections now, so if you haven't been into a drugstore lately, go take a look around. You will find many, many options there. And even extreme value retailers like dollar stores now offer grocery sections. Some even have fresh produce and fresh meat. So not only is our behavior changing, but also the number of environments where we're making these decisions is also changing. And so I think this is really important to understand for those reasons. Additionally, what we buy in terms of food is directly related to how we spend our money, because this is an item that we need all of the time. We all eat multiple times a day, hopefully. And so the average family of 4 spends about $140 a week on groceries. So it's a lot of spending. Also, it's related to our health. And so 63% of the food that we eat comes from a grocery store or a food store. And unfortunately for children, items that are purchased at food stores account for the highest number of empty calories, added sugars, and added fats compared to fast foods or what kids eat in school. So not only does it have financial implications, but it also has implications for our health. So what I'm really interested in is understanding how decisions are made in the environment so that we can try to encourage healthier decision making in stores. And so I like to take a step back from just going into the intervention phase and really explore the behavior so we can figure out the different ways that we can change the environment, change the interactions in the environment to lead to these healthier choices. So the research I'm going to be telling you about today is research that's focused more on the social influence side of things. So specifically what happens when you go shopping with others, and specifically when you go shopping with little others. So what happens when parents and children go shopping for food together? So if you have children, some of these images may resonate with you. Usually parents try to leave children at home when they're going shopping, but inevitably parents do shop with their children, and children do influence what is purchased. So the first study that I want to share with you, the findings for, is a study that was an observational study where observers dressed as either employees or store employees observed parents and children as they were shopping in a store. And what we were really interested in looking at for that study was what types of products children were requesting that parents buy and how they were asking for the products, and then what types of products were parents offering to children, and then what products ultimately were being purchased. So for this study, 100 parent-child diets were observed, and this study focused specifically on Latino consumers. And so again, the literature has shown that greater child involvement in decision-making around nutrition leads to higher levels of adult and childhood obesity. So generally, you don't want your kids deciding what you guys are going to eat at home. So we wanted to see how does this actually play out in the store. So some of the key findings, I'm not going to go through all of these, but some of the key findings from the study, out of 100 diets observed, there were 144 interactions observed. So again, either a child asking for something or a parent offering something to a child. Children initiated more requests than parents offered, and 56% of the things that children asked for were purchased, as opposed to 66% of the things that parents offered the children were purchased. And so that makes sense, because when a parent offers something, they're already willing to buy it. Whereas if a child asks for something, the parent still needs to agree. So that makes sense. Most of the children just ask for products, so these are different ways that a child can ask, and so generally they just ask. Interestingly, if you look at the parental response side, the most frequent response from the parent is what was coded as no reaction. And so we can't say the parent ignored the child because maybe they didn't hear the child, but in a lot of cases, parents are just not reacting to the children's request. What we found in this research was really two things that are really kind of unique and new to the literature. One is that the number of interactions that parents and children have varies by the gender of the parent and the child. And so children initiated more interactions with their mothers than their fathers. Sons initiated more with their fathers. Daughters initiated more with their mothers. And fathers initiated more than mothers in general. So this is really interesting because we're looking at the different dynamics of the parent-child relationship. We also found that most of the items that were discussed were items that were unhealthy. This isn't surprising, but these items were purchased more frequently when the parent offered them. So generally, one takeaway from this is if you're a parent, don't offer unhealthy things to your children so that they don't make it into the shopping cart. And then we also found that when children help during the shopping trip, such as when they assist with picking items out and with the checkout process, it leads to more interactions, more purchases, and more money spent overall in the store. So having your kids with you will increase how much you spend while you're shopping. So this study was really interesting. It looked at the interaction side of things. I was really interested in looking at what other factors were influencing children. So I have research that looks at in-store factors. Now this study looked at social influence factors. So briefly, this is a current study that I have right now. It's called the Shop Together Project. And the goal of this study was to capture all of the different factors that were influencing parents and children in the store. And so the way that this study works is that we're putting eye tracking glasses on both the parent and the child, and we're asking them to do their normal shopping. There is no task, and the eye tracking glasses are capturing not only what they see, but also their conversation. And so in addition to that data, we're also conducting interviews with the parents and the children, and we're looking at their sales receipt. And so this study is really meant to capture everything that's going on in the environment so we can truly understand what factors are influencing what people are choosing and buying in the store. So this is an ongoing project. Right now we're still in data collection, but hopefully once we have everything ready, it'll have some interesting findings for us to review. So that is all. Thank you. Questions?
It seems like eye tracking glasses, the very fact that people knew that you're watching everything they do might influence the outcomes.
Yeah, and that's we got that feedback a lot from our grant reviewers. And so we worked with the eye tracking company to really figure out how this is going to affect the behavior. And what their findings were that once people had the eye tracking glasses on, they feel like regular glasses. They're not intrusive in any way. After they've had them on for a few minutes, they kind of forget that they're there. And so the other kind of part of that is, even if it is adjusting the behavior, there is no other way to capture that type of data that we can use. And so even though we're aware of that it could have some effects, we still think that it's a good way to try to get at these research questions.
Could I ask one more question? Mm-hmm. You showed us data for Hispanic audiences. Do you have any idea if that's the same for other diverse groups?
So the studies were conducted specifically with Latino consumers because they shop more frequently than the average U.S. consumer. They also shop more frequently with their children, and they're also more likely to be influenced by their children. And so we focus on that specific group for those reasons. There's actually not data that exists that can be comparable for kind of a more general population. But I'm interested in seeing in future research how those things differ. And we're hoping with what we learned from this eye tracking study, we can then figure out what are the key things that are influencing Hispanic consumers, and then we can see if other groups are similarly influenced by the same factors.
Very interesting findings,
Thank
but
you.
I'm intrigued with the interpretation, given that this is observational study.
Yes.
However interesting, we don't know causality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So could it be, or do you have data to at least start looking at causality? Is there anything about people who bring children to grocery shopping that might explain both what's happening, or is there reverse causality, anything like that? Have you looked at it?
Yeah, and so these studies are meant to be formative, and so they're observational in nature. I'm a trained experimentalist, and so I have a number of research studies that then manipulate different factors and see different responses. And so my process is starting with more of the formative, looking at the observational, then based on that, kind of moving on to experiments, lab experiments, and then from there moving into interventions in the real world to then kind of build up all of the different steps.
I'm intrigued by these eye tracking glasses and what you hypothesize about them. So what are the variables that you're looking at? Are they like the duration of looking and where in the visual field they're looking? And are you collecting information about what, in fact, the people are seeing? And are you looking at that as a way to predict things like purchase and repurchase? Are those part of the things you're looking at?
Yeah, so this is a project that's being done in collaboration with computer scientists, and so it's also done with people in public health, and also we even have speech language and hearing sciences involved. And so with the eye tracking glasses, the computer scientists are writing programs to determine what were the things that were capturing the attention of the participants. And then from there, we're able to see the duration of something they looked at, how many times they looked at it. So previous research has shown if you pay attention to something, you're more likely to buy it. In this case, we're going to be able to know what does that actually mean, how long are people looking at things, how many things did they look at before they considered it. We can also see if they grab a product, we can see if they read information about the product. And we're doing this for both the parent and the child. And then we're actually seeing what they select, we're hearing their conversation, we're looking at their overall shopping basket and seeing what the makeup of that was, and then we're collecting a lot of household data to figure out what external factors outside of what's happening in the store could also be influence their purchasing behavior. And so we're looking at it from a marketing lens, we're looking at it from a public health, kind of how do we inform future interventions. We're looking at it from computer science, and then we are just kind of coming in this really interdisciplinary group with all of this really rich data and trying to really understand what's going on here. It's a ton of data, but it's very exciting.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.